right, David, welcome back.
Welcome,
I've lost
John. Here we
count.
are again, the
Let's do
Chuckle
this.
Brothers.
I've lost count how many episodes, but that's probably a good thing. So let's just keep going.
It's quite a few now. It's quite a few.
Is it 15, 16,
Could be.
something like
I've
that?
forgotten. Hmm.
Something like that. So here we are. Um, yeah, so today's topic, we put just a couple minutes of thought into this. Storytelling and conversational leadership. What are the similarities and differences between storytelling and conversational leadership?
Yeah.
Do you want to start us off? What are your first thoughts?
I think it's like comparing, I don't know, a car, well, an interior light on a car with the car itself, yeah, where storytelling is the interior light. It's a small part of a very much larger thing, and it's not even totally necessary. So I see a little bit of a hard view here, is that storytelling is a very, very small part of conversation leadership. It's yeah, you, that in that sense that they're so different that they're not comparable. Another way of looking at it is if conversational leadership is the orchestra, storytelling is the oboe, maybe.
Okay.
And I'm sure you can do without the oboe. It might add to the music, so it's valuable, but it's not necessary. So that's an initial thought. I've got some secondary ones, but what are your immediate thoughts?
Initial thoughts. Wow. We might actually be a little bit different this time. It's
Oh
nice.
wow, great. Yeah. Okay, let's have a good.
I mean, I definitely see and respect and understand where you're coming from. Yeah, and the question is similarities and differences. So I guess it does set up a comparison. Um, I always like, you and I have talked to Dr. Joel Brown Grant so many times, and I can't word it as well as he does, but like my first thought on the storytelling side, my first thoughts often go to it's like sitting on my mom or my dad's lap and hearing them tell me a story, and I'm just like in listen
You
mode.
still do that at your age?
No, I wish. That would be nice. But like, so yeah, even, flash back to a long, long time ago.
Mm.
But again, I don't have the right words for it, but it's something like all of life is a story. Like
Hmm.
we are living in an unfolding story, and there's something about viewing life as a story that shifts
Or
things.
we could view it as a conversation, but okay.
See, and that's where I think I wonder if that's actually more so as opposed to big thing, small thing. It's like, yeah, maybe all of life is a conversation, maybe all of life is a story, and then maybe there's something similar. And I do like the one last thing I guess I'll say just as open is storytelling as a kind of standard English word, but what about these other words of story thinking, story listening, which aren't real English words, but it does something when you kind of hear the that framing of, oh, maybe it is more than just sitting passively or even sharing passively with an audience. I think there is something about an unfolding, emerging, co-created story that's closer to a conversation than traditional storytelling.
Yes, I mean storytelling, when you're telling a story, it is one way. It is a performative act. I'm talking at you. Here's my story. This is the way this is the way it is. Where for me, conversational leadership, a good conversation is participatory. But you're right. I mean, storytelling, if you're doing it together, could be participatory. So you were talking there about life being a story, but
Yep.
whose story? Even if you looked at history through the lens of storytelling, different historians will tell different stories. Um, there isn't a single story, and that's the way you want it. In fact, the more stories you've got, the better. And in that sense, having lots of stories, it's in some ways not so much the story that's important, it's the differences in the stories and the conversations that engenders. So you've got a story about let's say something happened between us, and you've got a story as to what happened, and I've got a story as to what's happened, which are kind of two fixed points of view. Now the really interesting bit is to have that conversation about what parts of my story have I maybe embellished, um, and vice versa. So it's the conversation again, to my mind, that's important, not so much the story. That rambling makes sense.
It does. What about sense making? Is there something about where I think stories sort of have an intent to make sense of things? And I think conversational leadership, I think both of them have more than that, but I wonder if there's, I guess I'm drawing the Venn diagram and wondering if sense making is in the middle between the two. Do you
Well, again,
think?
I guess if you're making sense of things, again, you and I could look at you could look at anything, any event. You could look at the war in the Middle East. You could look at what's going on in your country right now, and you and I will have different perspectives, regardless of who we are. Our perspectives are going to be different. There might be very small differences or very large differences. So we're both going to have different perspectives, and you could call those perspective stories. We'll each have our, yeah, our individual stories, and then again, I'm really just repeating what I just said. It's the conversation where we maybe try to merge that into a single story. That that's where the value is.
Yeah, this topic is doing more than I thought it would for me because in the
Yeah,
moment,
it's the
I'm
same
wondering
for
like,
me.
does a story have to be like what are the phrases we use in conversational leadership? Serial monologue and parallel soliloquies.
Yes, yeah,
And I'm bringing those like kind of negative things up because I
yeah.
wonder in storytelling, I'm making this assumption and I'm kind of even sure I'm wrong, um, that a story has to be one person talking for a long time. I wonder if story, maybe as opposed to storytelling, is like you're saying it, right? Like I'll use the word perspective instead of story. I have a perspective, you have a perspective, and we're chatting about it, and um, I've got a story then, you've got a story, and we've got a shared story.
In fact, we've probably got each of us have got several stories
That too,
that
yeah.
that supports our particular perspective. So there's lots of stories coming in here.
Yeah.
I'm kind of backing away from my original opening remark answer,
Uh-oh.
which is good, because my first thought was, hey, that hasn't really got an awful lot to do with the conversation leadership, but in some ways it has. When you see it the way we're seeing it, the way we're talking about it, it has a lot to do with it.
The other thing I like, if I don't jump, because I'm liking where that is, but let me throw one more thing in and see what happens with it. One of the things I've learned about stories, just stories, are all the story processes that happen. And I guess one of the most common ones is that hero's journey. The,
Yeah.
starts positive, it gets better, then there's a conflict, then there's a deeper conflict, and then you resolve the conflict, but then there's one more, there's like I don't have it memorized, but there's a whole process to it. uh, Keep that over in storytelling if I want to, I'm doing more like a Venn diagram. I think you and I've sort of talked about this, but never had quite enough time. I wonder over on the pure conversation side, is there something like that that we've never talked about or never seen or never been documented or just not aware of, where we've talked about conversational dynamics and conversational patterns? Are there some like core pattern?
Are there some repeating patterns in any conversation? Are there maybe a small set of repeating patterns?
And I'm talking both like between like me and you, all levels. Conversations I have with myself, conversations just two people have, and then I always get extra excited. Conversations that 8 billion people on the planet have. Is there a predictable pattern curve conversational
Is there a
process?
pattern?
Yeah. Because if I had to guess one, if we like this path, um, I've throughout my entire life, I've come back and forth from like, oh, I really enjoy small talk, and it like starts to bond, and then you can see where it goes, and it's so exciting, to, oh man, I cannot stand small talk. Have no time for that. Sorry, I gotta move on. Can't do it. Back now, I think at this point of like, oh, thank goodness this conversation is easy and not difficult. Sure, I'm happy to talk about the weather and sports. And so like, do you have to start? You've talked about it with like animals in the wild. There's like, they've got ways of grooming each other, and our banter, our small talk, for lack of a better word, is our social grooming. That's
Oh yeah,
always
I'd forgotten all about that.
that one stuck with me.
That was
Yeah.
Dunbar, wasn't it? But I've got a book on that very topic. Forgotten the name of the book now, but yeah, it's just looking at small talk as being our way of grooming each other,
hmm
which is quite a fascinating
Is
way
is
of
yeah. Is that a
well,
story? Is that a conversational process? Is that I don't know.
it's not story, is it? It's not even a conversation.
Well, I agree. The weird, if I try to force it into story, let me go the knowledge management, like implicit knowledge route, the shared assumption that like you almost have to, like if you meet somebody on a train or at a grocery store or something, like almost like you have to start this. The story is you have to start with small talk. You can't do something else.
Oh yes, yeah. It's again Peter Block, connection before content.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and that's well again, I think when we meet strangers, that's what we do. And in that small talk at the beginning, you're sussing the other person out because you can tell a lot about them by their accent. And I don't necessarily mean a foreign accent, whether you can tell something about their, in English terms, their class. If they went to Oxford or Cambridge, you can probably tell by their accent. So you can tell a lot about them by their accent, by their dress, by their degree of confidence. So that small talk allows you to suss the other person out, and of course, what you're doing as well is figuring out your position relative to them. Is this person got more power than I have? Um, and then that kind of dictates to some degree where the conversation goes.
Mm,
But I keep coming back to I've got something in my book about what constitutes a real conversation. And this is where I say, again, we have our fun. You can't have a conversation with a picture. You can't have a conversation with yourself. I'm kind of reassessing that a little bit these days because I'm thinking a lot more about it. But for me, if uh, if I said to you, John, I believe the moon is made of green cheese, if you came back and ridiculed me and said, "Oh, for God's sake, David, um, that's one response. The other is, oh, that's interesting, David. What what brought you to that conclusion? Yes. So
hmm
the one is telling me I'm wrong. The other is curiosity as to why I would have such a crazy belief. And for
hmm
me, the first one where you basically attack me, even if quite gently, that's not a conversation because
mm
it's not going anywhere. The second one where you say to me, hey, that's interesting. Tell me how you now. Now that's exploratory. Now you're interested in what's going on in my head, um, rather than you being right and me being wrong. And so for me, that second one is a genuine conversation. The first one is not a conversation. Okay, in everyday terms, it is. Yeah, it's in the general sense that we use the word, it's a conversation. But for me, I'm kind of trying to preserve the word conversation for something that's very special and very rare.
mm mm. Yeah, okay, so I had to write things down because I had three things pop up for me.
Okay.
One is this is like I don't know if it's a difference between us, but it's a mild thing that like I've got that wide range of conversation because then the attribute I put to it is quality. So I would say that sure, if
Mm.
I attack you and say something that ends the conversation,
Yeah.
I would say it's still a conversation, but I would say it's a very low quality
Okay.
conversation.
Yeah. It's,
That's that
it's,
old
it's a spectrum here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's that's that old Ed Shine thing of like, on his like levels of connection or leadership or whatever he called it. He had four levels and he didn't have level one, two, three, four. He numbered them -1,
Yes.
0, 1, 2.
Yeah.
And that was very intentional and very like, we
Mm.
all know what -1 means, right? So like, it's a lower, it's a different quality. So that was one thing that jumped up for me. The other one is, isn't it like words versus intent is the point I want to make right now. Isn't it
Uh-huh.
fascinating that if
Yeah.
I came to you and said, David, you're an idiot, why what's wrong with you? But if we were so, so close, like I hope we are, that you were like,
I
you
would
didn't,
laugh. Yeah.
you don't receive it as an attack. You don't
I
receive it as
wouldn't
I hate you.
receive
I
it as
never,
an attack.
you
You're
receive it
right.
as, almost funny and almost like, you're such a close friend. Thank you so much. Like, you're right. Like, let me rethink, like, I'm coming from love. I'm
Don't you
coming
know that
from,
moon's made of green cheese? Didn't your mother ever teach you that?
what's wrong with you? That kind of thing. But like the words versus the intent.
Yeah.
I have a hunch that there's something we could really explore there on like what is that? I'm gonna call it magic for now. That like sometimes words are devastating and critical, and you cannot mess up the words. And sometimes the words don't matter at all.
No, no. It's the it's a I keep coming back to everything's relational. It's about the relationship.
Yeah,
It really is about the relationship. There's something I want to explore where there's some physicist that reckons that you know atoms, material, it doesn't actually exist except in relationship to something else.
right.
A bit philosophical, a bit deep, but I suspect there may well be something in that. There's this whole idea that you can't position an atom, say, until you actually observe it. There's something there about relationship.
And isn't it like when you get down to that tiny, tiny level that the actual physical material is tiny, but there's tremendous space between
Lots of space, yeah.
lots of space, which I think is the relational. The last one the third other thought that I wrote down so I don't forget is audience. I think this, if I go back to my Venn diagram, storytelling, conversational leadership, I don't think you and I would ever, in fact, I would personally, and I wonder if you agree, would push back on the word audience. In conversational leadership, I don't want an audience.
Exactly.
I don't want people listening. I want involvement. I want contribution. I want now, is there some silence in the conversation? Sure. Um, but I don't think I'm,
When I
and you
talk about
know,
my cafes, I never talk about audience. I never talk about delegates, for God's sake.
yeah,
I
yeah,
talk about participants.
yeah,
The same at conferences. Conferences they can refer to audience, delegates.
yeah,
Unfortunately, for most conferences,
yeah.
that's true. But you really want them to be participants. You want. I again, you you've heard enough of my rants about conferences that there was something that triggered me again the other day. Um, just all this, you might have 100, you might have 500 people in the room, all very knowledgeable, all human beings, and you've got a few so-called experts on the stage talking at them and taking a few questions from the more vociferous people in the audience. I mean, it's barbaric. I still can't believe we're still doing it.
Yeah.
What happened to storytelling? Okay, you've changed my mind slightly
Oh no.
on ah, I do sometimes. So there's
Mm.
some things I'm still not believing you have a conversation with a picture. You have a picture. You have a conversation in your head about the picture.
Yeah, I think if we oh, seriously,
I might even come around on that because I have been changing my views slightly on, in a broad sense, what constitutes a conversation.
that's my strange definition on like, conversation is across time and space. It goes back to I think if I understand your view, you're looking for a pretty short time, like I speak and less than a second later you speak and you speak for a minute and then I speak for a minute and there's 1 second, half a second between our stuff and all I'm doing is saying the artist drew that painting 100 years ago and died and 100 years have passed and now I'm seeing it for the first time. Do you see where like I'm taking this extreme instead of a quarter second between our words, there's 100 years between our words,
But
and the
this
words
comes
were.
back to the relational bit. You look at that picture and all that stuff will go through your head. A child or um, a native Indian would look at that picture and say it's just colors. Uh,
Mhm.
and that's what I find interesting is we we see things differently depending on our life experience.
Yeah.
Um,
How much, here's one maybe to maybe spark a future talk for us.
mm,
Um, how important is sense making, shared sense making
uh-huh.
in a relationship? Can I have my own worldview and you have your own worldview and we just go on our merry ways? Or how much of it has to be, if not, I don't mean we have to agree and see the world the same way. I just mean, how open do we have to be to each other?
I think in a relationship you can have two people with very different worldviews. In, in fact, invariably that's the case. Even if on the surface people seem similar, you've only got to scratch that surface to realize that we're not. You and I have got so much in common that we've got similar worldviews, but your background and everything and mine are totally different. Inside we're totally different creatures. Now, the exciting bit is being open, that you and I can have a conversation, and we can have very different views on religion or what have you, and we're not going to judge each other. We're not going to get upset with each other. We're not going to get angry. We're going to listen. The driving force is curiosity. And I think that makes even two people with very different worldviews, if they can talk about them and maybe change on certain things or not, um, the fun and what creates that relationship is the conversation around those differences. When you can't have that conversation because both either one or both are closed, then it's not really a relationship, is it? It's kind of dead. It's a dead parrot.
Yeah. Have we ever, I don't know why this story is coming up, but stories, maybe because we're talking about storytelling. I heard this story once and I apologize, I can't remember like who to give it credit for. Have I ever told you, or is it worth me telling the story about the person that thought they were God and the reactions they got from people? Did I ever tell you this one?
It sounds a little familiar. Tell me again.
Maybe. I guess sure, I'll do it. And you can't say that and then not tell it, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so there's a conversational pattern for you.
Actually,
Okay.
John, you told it 1,000 times. I'm just being
Don't
kind.
tell it again. Yeah, some just go look it up.
No, go ahead.
All right, fine.
I don't remember it.
Let me see if I can remember it really quick. It's something like um, there's a guy admittedly in a psychiatric ward, and he believes he's God, and everyone that talks to him tells him he's broken. What's wrong with you? How could you be so dumb and stupid? You know nothing. You need professional help. You need drugs, all this kind of stuff. And the way the story goes is one doctor comes into this, big, room and sits with this guy in the middle of the chair, in the two chairs in the middle of the room. And he says, well, I'm God. And that's why, just tell me how wrong I am. And, you two try to fix me. And he says to him, it's nice to meet you, God. I've always wanted to meet you. How is it? And, he doesn't obviously like change immediately, but the story goes that after being met and validated and heard, that he changed his own thinking of not so much I'm not God, but maybe I'm God and this other person that I am. And so like there's
Oh
something
boy,
about
John.
that like meeting. You're talking about coming with curiosity. I think that's kind of an ultimate. Maybe it's the same story you just told, just differently, but coming with some kind of true openness, not because I think as humans we also see through when it's faked, when it's patronizing.
Yeah, patronizing. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But you're touching on something there. It's when somebody tells you something and they share belief, and at least from your point of view, it's patently untrue, but it's a belief that they hold very strongly.
Hmm.
Um, and okay, you could be wrong. Your belief could be wrong, but
Yeah.
sometimes it could. You actually know that it's wrong.
Mm.
Um, you can you can challenge them on it, and the problem with that is that you probably, if it's a very strong belief on their side, and they are not open, you're going to do immense harm to the relationship. If you're not concerned about that relationship, go ahead. Yes. Put them straight. Yes, they need
Mhm.
to be told. On the other hand, if the relationship's important, maybe it's a child, spouse, then you've got the issue as, do you try to have that conversation with them and explain why they're wrong, or do you go along, at least initially, and agree with them, even though it kind of goes against the grain, because you know you're supporting them in a misbelief, a disbelief, but you also know that if you challenge it, um, first of all, they're not going to change, and secondly, you're going to do harm to the relationship. So there's kind of like a real ethical dilemma there as to how to approach that, and I've never quite figured that out in my head. I don't know whether you got thoughts on
My thoughts on that one are good luck.
that.
And my thoughts are something about like uh, we're all, you and I both know that like the complexity of each person, the complexity of the relationship. I'm trying not to use this word experiment because that sounds awful with people, but I don't know what other word to say. If like you're like for me, always sort of trying to be in relationship and see myself and see the other person and honor and respect that. And I absolutely make mistakes.
Oh
And
yeah,
so then there's some kind of almost
you,
learning that pops up with like, okay, it didn't work with this person, but then funny enough, that exact same thing might work differently with
but
another
with the same
person.
but the same person, it might work one
It
day, but
might
not
work
the
at
other, because you,
exactly.
you don't know what position, what mental state they're in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but to me, it keeps coming back to openness. I would like to think that people can say absolutely anything to me. They can challenge me on anything, and there might be a twinge of pain, but I'm not going to get seriously upset about it. Um, again, I think part of it is having confidence in yourself. That confidence might be totally misplaced,
Yeah.
but at least I'm not going to get upset or angry, or even resort to violence, which so often happens.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
We'll come back to this one sometime, but
All right. Well, see, it sparked more than we thought.
I think we're kind of out of time, aren't we?
Sure. Sure.
But interesting. All right. So shall we stop there?
Sounds good. Well done. Thank you.
Same time, same place next week.
Next week.
Okay.